Hello to my amazing, bold agents. It is Coach Hudson here with our second installment of the pre-coaching series before Bold starts in January. And, last week we talked about commitment because we're not getting anywhere if we don't have that. And so we talked about that. Today, I want to talk about being intentional. And I can sum it up really easily. It's being intentional with what we do with our time, how we spend it, what we say yes to and what we say no to. Because the truth is that if you think of the most, because we all have that person, like, let's just be honest, right? We all have that person that we would love to have what they have, whether it's like tangibly what they have or the level of success that they have. And it's really easy to say the things that people say, right? Like, oh, well, it works for them. It just doesn't work for me. Or, I'm just not made that way. Or must be nice that they like, no. The difference between where you are today and having everything that you truly desire, even some of the stuff that you don't say out loud, right? It all comes down to how intentional you are with your time, period. End of story, right? So in looking at that, and okay, so how, I want to be like Ben Kinney, or I want to be like Lance Logan, or I would like, well, no. So they are intentional with their time. It's not that they are better educated or came from money or anything like that. They're just intentional with their time. And you can do so too. And I want to share something with you. And some of you may have heard this before from me because it is something I share often when I like zoom in for an office meeting or something like that. So apologize in advance, except not really, because we only are wired to retain about 10% of what we hear. So it's all good. What I want to share with you, just quickly, because it pertains so well, are the four quadrants of how you spend your time, which come from Stephen Covey. So I'm going to show you this and I'll describe it because you can't read my writing. I just want you to know it's a real thing. I should have been a doctor, right? And yet the idea is it's clarity around how you spend your time. So here are the four quadrants: urgent and important. All right. So urgent and important, those are deadlines. That's the putting out the fires. I call people that live in that quadrant the Pop-Tart agents, because they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll show the house right now. No big deal. Oh, okay, no, I'll revise it right now. I know I'm in the middle of something, and yet I'm going to do it right now. These are these urgent things that are important. And when we spend a lot of time in that quadrant, it doesn't really lead to growth, and it does really lead to stress and to burnout. The second quadrant is important and yet not urgent. Important and not urgent. Now, here's the trick. This is all your growth stuff, right? This is the education and the reading and the meditation and the time with your family and the exercise and all of that stuff. All of that falls into quadrant two, which is important and not urgent. This is where you get fulfilled. This is where you create happiness. And yet, because it is not urgent, it's often easy to miss, right? So then you've got the third quadrant. The third quadrant, I'll show you again. So, what is he talking about, right? The third quadrant is not important and yet urgent. These are the interruptions that derail so many of us, right? These are, if you feel like a squirrel, it's because you're living in quadrant three, right? These are the got a minute. This is, oh, I really do. Oh, I want some coffee right now. I'm really in the zone, yet I want some coffee. I'm gonna go get it. Well, I'm gonna leave my door open. I don't want people to think I'm rude. I'm gonna leave my door open while I lead generate. Oh, hey, what's good? Like, this is where you get interrupted. This is where you lose your focus. And there's lots of studies that have been done by very smart people, much smarter than me, that have found that on average, it's going to take any human 15 to 20 minutes to get back into focus, right? So you've got that important and not important and urgent, which just kind of robs us of our focus. This is actually like the quadrant of deception. We feel like we're busy and we feel like we're helping, and yet we're not productive. And then the fourth quadrant is not important and not urgent. And this is where you waste time. This is not a fun quadrant, and yet it is an alluring quadrant, right? Like, oh, I'm just going to check Facebook or Instagram real quick, and all of a sudden it's an hour later. Oh, God, I need a minute. You know what? I'm going to play like 5 minutes of my favorite game on my phone, and now it's 30 minutes later. Ooh, crap, right? So these are and I'm not saying that spending time in the fourth quadrant and wasting some time once in a while isn't valuable, because sometimes we do just need to decompress as people. It's how much time are we spending in that quadrant? So I share all that to say, again, one more time, and you may want to like rewind this and write this down. Like, what if you looked at the past week? Where did you spend most of your time in? And I know simply by the law of averages, not because you are not like all smart, amazing, good looking, wonderful, successful people, right? Like just by the law of averages, I know that most of us spend a lot of time in quadrant 3 and in quadrant 4. Sometimes we spend some time in one. Where most people spend the least amount of time is in quadrant 2, the growth quadrant, the things that are not urgent and yet important. So there's another bold law I'm going to share with you. Your business grows to the extent that you do. And what I will tell you is probably one of the most significant lessons that I've learned in my life is how real that is. That truly, when I decided to slow down and spend less time working and more time planning, growing, reading, attending growth minded events and classes, I made more money. So I tell people all the time, and I think they assume that I'm joking or being silly, and I'm not. The less I work, the more I earn. Truly, that's been true for probably the last 7 years or so now. I really made that switch, and it's been a beautiful thing. And so, again, where can you be more intentional with your time? Not how do you work more? I don't want you to work more. I don't care what the market does. There's no reason you must work more than 40 hours a week like a normal person in the world, right? Like, where could you spend your time more efficiently? And in fact, here's the beautiful thing about being intentional. When you're intentional with what you're doing in any given moment, everything becomes less stressful. Like you can get it all done work wise in a certain amount of time, and then you can actually be present with your family, with your friends, with your children, with your spouse. Like they don't have to think that this is what you look like because you don't need to be plugged in because you've got it all done and it's all good. Being intentional is taking the time. And in fact, let's relate this to bold. I'm going to challenge you, if you're watching this, to be intentional when you're in bold. So, in other words, don't stare at your phone the whole time. Don't have your laptop open and doing other things. You're robbing yourself of the opportunity to grow. And if you're doing it in bold, you're doing it in other places. And so, one question I would normally ask when I show those quadrants is where does lead generation belong? And people will always answer in quadrant number 1, except lead generation is not urgent naturally, is it? The, the this issue on this deal and meeting this appraiser and picking up the kids and oh, I said I would help so and so. Like all of that stuff becomes urgent because there's a deadline to it. So where lead gen falls is in quadrant number 2, the place where we get the happiness and we tend to ignore. So we've got to create the urgency around lead generation. And when we do that, we buy our time back outside of work. This whole idea of being 24/7 available as a real estate agent is robbing you of the life that you wanted when you got your real estate license. So again, going back to bold and you guys is preparing to being absolute to getting the best return on your investment of time and money being in bold, do not be distracted. You're going to get a break every morning where you can check in with things if you need to. You're going to have lunch where you can do some work. And then you're going to be done at 2:30 every day. It's not going to matter. And I'll tell you something. If you're going to be intentional, you must focus, right? I didn't focus for most of my career. And when I finally started, and it was in a bold room before I was a coach, my coach at the time cared enough to make me real mad in the moment and call me out when I was on my phone. And I was one of the top producers in the room. And she simply said to me, where else are you not present in your life right now in front of the whole class? And in the moment, I was mad. And in the moments after, I had a lot of thinking time to realize just how disconnected I was in my world. And because of that, I had to think of things differently, right? Like I didn't need to check my phone every 3 seconds. I just didn't. Like the appraisal that came in short, the inspection challenges, the counter offer, like an hour or two wasn't going to change anything. Like I had to learn that I wasn't the great and powerful Oz and that my deals were either going to close or they weren't going to close. I didn't actually have that much control in that. Now I could go create more deals, And then after I was done with the activities that create more deals, I could go back to the current deals and do what I could to hash out any issues. And yet me jumping on it at 9:07 a.m. or at 12:30 p.m. really had no difference on the outcome. I had to accept that. And then over time, it was proven to me that that was the case. So be intentional in general, and yet be intentional while you're in bold. When you're scrolling and emailing and returning text messages, you might miss the one line that was worth every one of those $799 that you spent. So I want to challenge you. I know we're going into the holiday season, right? I totally get it. And I want you to take time. And yet the time that you choose to work, don't be off in la la land. Don't be scrolling and buying the last minute Christmas presents. No, work. Put in real work, the work that'll help grow you, not just get you paid tomorrow. Do the real work that's going to grow you so that you can leave early if you chose to go get those last minute gifts, to go take time off, to go meet your friend for dinner that you haven't seen forever and you've been thinking about them. When you get the important stuff done, you can do everything else that you wanted to do. All right, so be intentional. Be intentional when you're at Bold. You'll get another one of these next week. I know you'll all be Christmased out for most of us, and it's all good. And you're still going to get the video, and you can watch it when you choose to. I appreciate you and your time and your commitment to your growth, and let me know if there's anything I can ever do for you. Thank you.